This is Dan Bolen. I'd like to welcome all of you to our podcast, The Courage to Be Courageous, a place where people can come and hear stories from people all over the United States who have faced fear and have the courage to get through their fear and hopefully become their authentic selves. I hope you'll receive some encouragement from these stories. We have a very special guest I'd like to introduce you with today. It's Jay Warren. I want to tell you a little bit about how Jay and I met. As you may know, I do front runners and front walkers, which is an international organization. I do them in Phoenix and I do them in San Diego. I spend the winter in Phoenix where I work with the front runners group. And when I'm in San Diego, I work with the San Diego Front Runners Group, which is an incredible group. And I'd like to encourage all of you out there, if you're looking for a place, a family, and a community, Front Runners and Front Walkers is international. Almost all over the world in certain big cities, they can be found. So check them out, Front Runners, and you can check in and find out if there's one close to your location as well. So that's how I met Jay. I met him through the Front Runners organization here in San Diego. And also, I will be interviewing a Front Runners president here, Tom, who has consented for us to give him a podcast so he can share some of the encouragement about front runners. And then in Phoenix, I have one named Greg who will also be sharing his stories about front runners because he's traveled all over the world and has had contact with front runners in those countries. So it's going to be a really exciting podcast that will have that in the near future. So Jay, welcome to my podcast. This is Jay Warren. As I said, we had the opportunity to meet at the Front Runners in San Diego. So Jay, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you were able to come to the place that you're at today.
I'm a native of San Diego, and other than while I was in the military and the Peace Corps, I've lived here all my life. The probably wasn't until I was in college that I realized that I liked looking at men. But back in the 70s doing that was not safe, so it's not something I advertised.
Of course.
After a failed marriage of about 6 months, we just weren't getting along. Plus, I told my wife then that I was attracted to men. She used that as an excuse to end the marriage, which was okay because we weren't getting along anyway. I eventually joined the military. My first duty assignment was Germany. And there, I fell in love with my wife. Just by happenstance. Didn't know that this would happen, but she ended up being the love of my life, and we were married for 32 years.
Oh, my.
She died of cancer just under 4 years ago. And at that time, obviously, anybody who loses a loved one, in this case, my spouse, you go through grief. And it took me about a year before I decided to talk to a grief counselor. And this counselor was also gay, and he helped me talk about my sexuality. The one thing that he kept emphasizing over and over again was, you're not going to meet anybody. You're going to be poor little me until you get out there. So I knew of the Front Runners. I actually read the book back in the 70s. So I knew of them. I like to run. I've always liked to run. So for me, it was very difficult, but I signed up. Somebody met me at the first meeting. It was back of early August 2021, I think, yes. And I have never felt so comfortable in my life. It was at that moment that I decided to come out.
Wow, that's fascinating.
I was comfortable being around a group of men and women who didn't judge me, didn't even ask if I was straight or gay. Just say, welcome. How far do you run? And that was it.
I want to ask you a question, Jay, about your wife, because you were with her 32 years. What was her name? May I ask her name, please?
Irene.
Irene. Let's talk about Irene. That's an incredible length of time to be married to Irene for 32 years. You and I talked yesterday that you actually told her before you married her that you had been with men. Is that correct? And tell us a little more about that.
Yes, because I didn't want to make the same mistake as the first marriage by not saying anything. And I wanted to be upfront. So if it wasn't going to work, it would be ended right there.
Right.
So I told her, I said I've been with several men before I was ever married back in the 70s. And she said, okay, we just don't need to talk about it. That was it. Never brought up again.
Now, I think what is really fascinating about your story that you were faithful to your wife for all those 32 years. Is that correct?
Well, yes. By the time I met her, it took me about a month and a half to fall in love with her. We worked in the same office. I was technically her boss, but she wouldn't admit to that. And so we went out on our first date, and which wasn't a date. We were going out to the local nightclub, and she said she wasn't ready to go home. And it was early. So I said, "What can I tell him?" She said, "Sure, why not?" And then we went to the local nightclub. We're in Germany. My wife was German. At the dance clubs, dance studios, they have a restaurant adjacent. And this one had a glass wall between the two. So you could see the dancing, but you wouldn't be in a loud music. And we had planned to dance, but we spent about 5 hours just talking.
Oh my!
Just talking. It was just couldn't stop getting enough of information and knowledge each other, and that's when I fell in love.
Oh wow, that's fascinating. Now, in the years that you were together, 32 years, you were faithful to your wife and did not cheat on her. Is that correct?
Yes, I had no intention of. I didn't need to. She was the love of my life. As the cancer progressed in the last 6 years of her life, that's when I started looking at gay porn.
Mm-hmm.
And she caught me a couple times, and I was totally embarrassed. The one thing I didn't want to do was to make her cry.
Of course. Uh-huh.
And I told her that, no, this was just urges I had, but she had nothing to worry about. I would never have left her, especially as the cancer progressed.
Mm-hmm. That's so courageous of you, Jay. I think that's really encourage to our listeners that people can be able to maintain a relationship, even though some cannot do that. You were able to do that, and that obviously took some courage on your part. Now you have 2 boys, and I want to talk about when you came out to your boys and what was their reaction.
We were living in Escondido at the time. I'd retired from the Army already. It was probably junior, senior year. I really don't remember. I just remember when I did come out, when I did tell them, it was okay, no big deal. There was no conversation. There was no, how do you feel? Or what about mom? And it was just, okay. And they went about doing their own thing.
Oh, wow. I think young people accept it more today than they did in our generation.
What I did do, I don't want to interrupt.
No,
what
go
I did
ahead.
do, when I did officially come out to other people, I did tell them again. I said, you know that I'm gay and I'm out now. They said, oh, okay, yes. Just be careful. Don't get any of the diseases that the gay people get. And we're happy for you.
Oh, that's incredible. And what's interesting, because I know Jay and I ran in the, I believe the Gay Pride 5K last year here in San Diego, and both of his sons run with him at the Gay Pride Parade, and they've done that for several years. Is that correct, Jay?
They've done it for about 10 years.
About 10 years. Wow.
Yes.
What an incredible story. That is fascinating, too. Now, did you come out to other members of your family, brothers, sisters, or whatever?
Just one sister, an older sister. We've always been very close. And the other family members, unless it comes out through other people, there's no need to mention to them. They're ultra conservative. And why stir a hornet's nest if it's not needed?
I understand that. Now, how did your sister respond?
She said, okay, that's good. I'm happy for you. And then she told her 2 kids, who I'm very to, no issues with it.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So are they nieces or nephews?
A niece and a nephew.
A niece and a nephew. And have you discussed it with them, or you just know they're okay? Have they made any comments about it?
They haven't. We had a family gathering a couple of weeks ago. Another nephew was getting married. And so the nephew who knows, in fact, the one who got married also knows too, but he didn't tell anybody.
Right.
I think he probably told his now wife, but Joseph's his name. He ran with us. He ran with the front runners.
Oh, he did. Okay.
That weekend. So and he met a lot of the people there, and he talked with them. I barely had a chance to talk with him. He's very engaging, and so he never asked anything about my sexuality, what's it like, or anything like that. He just accepted it as that's a normal thing. I don't ask about straight people and their sexuality.
Of course, it is. I get that.
And so that's the way he treated me in that sense.
Excellent. So now, I think you told kind of an interesting story that you used the term, I think I'm gay.
Yes.
Tell us about that, Jay.
When I finally decided to join the front runners, had a few people there. In fact, they were visitors. They weren't even members of the front runners. And they said, well, are you gay? And I said, well, I think I am. And the one guy said, you're either gay or you're not gay. You need to make your decision. And so I said, I guess I am gay.
Great. So since you've come out and you've been with the front runners, what's your life been like now that you feel you're out as your authentic self? Are you more happy, peaceful? Where are you at in your life right now?
I'm much happier. I feel much more comfortable. I've told a few straight friends. They're very happy for me. And these are the friends who I interact with the most. So if the subject ever came up, they know where I am as far as that issue. I recently moved in San Diego, North County, to city of San Diego, central San Diego, which is about a 45-minute drive on a good day.
Oh, wow.
And part of that was my gym was down here, the front runners were down here, all the things I was doing. So part of me said, I need to get closer. I was tired of the drive. So I found a place down in San Diego just 2 months ago, recently completed the move, and I am much happier. I'm happy that I'm not judged by the people I hang around with. I feel normal.
Well, Jay, I'm so proud of you. You've had a lot of courage to come where you're at today. And what was it that you think held you back? Was there shame involved, or was there just fear of being rejected? That has a lot to do with people when they cannot be rejected by someone. Was that
It was the rejection part. The fear of being rejected. I didn't have any shame in it. I'm raised Catholic. I'm still Catholic. I still go to Mass. I have, how would you say? I have taken care of the question of my sexuality in the Catholic Church, studied the Bible, look at all the readings as much as I can. So that part is not an issue with me. So I'm not ashamed of being gay. But I had that fear of rejection, and of the people closest in my life. They were the hard ones to tell. They were the ones I was so fearful that they would say, oh, I can't associate with a gay person. But every one of them gave me a positive, you're doing great.
Now, when you say people of your family, but that is in your...
oh, no, they already knew. And I'm sure the reason why I told my sister is because I knew she would give me an affirmation, a positive affirmation. It were the people, like I said, the straight people in my life who I deal with, teachers. I'm a retired teacher, people where I used to live, one person where I used to live, because I think she was hitting on me. So I had to tell her. And there was a retirement community, and the men in the community were like 10 to 1.
Mm-hmm.
So I told her, she had no problem with it. I told people at the gym, no problem with it. I told my wife's best friend, in fact, she was the first one I told, no problem with it.
Wow. So you had this fear of being rejected, but in reality, there was not a rejection. Would that be correct?
I'm very, very happy. The people who were in my life before I came out are still in my life now.
And what do you think if someone who was very close and you're gay, I can't associate with you anymore? How would you feel if that it didn't happen? But if it did happen, how would you feel about that? Would you be able to let that person go as part of your life?
I probably would. It wouldn't be a problem in the sense that you don't see a person. They're just, they're not there anymore. If you don't see them, it didn't happen, thank goodness. But I had talked to several other gay men that I've met over the years, and I asked them that same question you just asked. Let it go. You move on. You mourn a little bit, and then you regroup and keep going forward.
Excellent point. And I'd like to add something to that as well. Of course, as you know, Jay had read my book, The Courage to Be Courageous. I lost a whole family. Daughter supported me. All my brothers and sisters haven't had anything to do with me because I'm disfellowshipped from the church. And there comes a point where if you lose someone that is a friend, you have to really question what the friendship was all about. Because if it's a real friend, they're going to accept you authentically for who you are. And so that's one point I had to deal with. The other thing, too, is understanding that many times our family of blood is not necessarily our family of choice. So my brothers and sisters are my family of blood, but my family of choice are people like you and others of the LGBTQ community. And so there's some positive things that come from that. And one of the things, too, that made me really let go of my brothers and sisters was the thought that Jesus made a comment about forgiveness before he was impaled. He said, as you know, his own people impaled him. And he said, "Forgive them, Father, for they do not know what they have done." So forgiveness for me is the answer for my family. Now, that's a hard thing to do, but I believe forgiveness, because they don't understand my life. They don't understand how I know I was born this way. So forgiveness is the key as well. So I just wanted to share that as a point. So let's talk about, Jay has been so encouraging to our Frontrunner group and to me personally. What advice or thoughts would you give to individuals that are on our podcast listening? Maybe they haven't come out. Maybe they have fear of coming out. Maybe they're ashamed of who they are. What advice would you give them to help them to be able to embrace their own authenticity?
Find somebody who they trust. Male, female, doesn't matter. Family member, non-family member, maybe even a therapist, a third person that you don't even know. But find somebody you trust that you can tell them anything, and they will answer any question you ask them. For me, it was talking to others. I couldn't have done it by reading books. I couldn't have done it by watching videos. It had to be a person, mainly a person who's experienced what I was going through, and I'm probably still going through. And I found that to be extremely helpful. Part of it was asking questions that, no one's ever going to answer that question. Oh, that's too embarrassing to ask. These people, the person you find, that person will answer any question. There is no embarrassing question. That's what was really helpful. I found 2 people like that, and it was very, very helpful.
So that helped you grow, and that helped you advance in your authentic self by having friendships.
Right. It's One was from the front runners, and he guided me. You might say he was like a mentor, even though he was much younger than I was, than I am.
Well, that's fascinating. I appreciate that thought too. So what's your future like right now, Jay? I know you're single. And I know that you would you like to have a partner in your life?
When my wife passed away, I said, I don't need anybody anymore. This is it. But it's been almost 4 years, and I am craving a relationship. I realize now that I do want to have a partner. And I want somebody who will respect me as much as I respect him. And all the ins and outs of a relationship, God, I was with somebody for 34 years, to include the time we weren't married. Can I do that again? I always make the funny quip of, am I ready to share my sock drawer with somebody else? Because that means I have to give part of my space to that person. And I'm so much older than I was before, where life was probably easier and material goods, you didn't have as many. So it wasn't that difficult back then. But now I'm set in my ways. I have everything I need. But I want that companionship. I want someone to hold me and me hold them, and just not be alone anymore.
Wow, that is fascinating. And you will find them, Jay. Jay, of course, I know Jay, and he is nice looking, and he's nicer on the inside than he is on the outside. I think that's true. People will be drawn to those characteristics as well. Well, Jay, it's been such a pleasure for you sharing your story with us today on our podcast. I'll look forward to seeing you probably tomorrow or Saturday at Front Runners, and being able to spend some more time with you. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I believe our listeners out there will find some really encouraging points to help them to move in their authentic self and whatever it takes, so that they can use courage to overcome any fear that they have. So thank you so much for being with me, Jay.